So as the CEO of Florida Ice and Farm Company, can you share with us the role of values and purpose in how you lead, and as well as how the board sees these values and purpose in terms of their leadership as a board?
Yes, so FIFCO's purpose and values are certainly the core elements, I would say the essence of our company and the guiding principles in our journey to become a holistic business. We define our purpose, we bring a better way of living to the world, and has resonated a lot with our employees. They understand that a company has to create social and environmental value for all the stakeholders here, and not only economic and financial value for the shareholders. We have described that a company is not a caterpillar company, one that extracts as much as it can from the nature and from society in general, but instead we should be more resemble like a butterfly, an organization that creates value for society, and one that shares the value, or that we share the value better with all our stakeholders. I think that currently there's a strong connection between our core business and our purpose, and that helps me and the board as well to achieve the results that we select. We have been able to connect at the deepest level with our employees. If you do right, the purpose, I think the purpose connects with the heart of your employees, and sometimes the strategy, visions, and ambitions, it really hits with the head here. And I think the more that we are able to have a stronger connection with the purpose, it's much better for us. So our employees have been able to identify with FIFCO purpose and values, and that has made a significant difference to improve their level of engagement, motivation, and commitment to the company. And I do strongly believe that if you are able to win the hearts of your employees, you will have their minds forever. We went through a very interesting experience on finding the higher purpose of our organization. And I was supported, we were growing very fast. We made 4 acquisitions in 18 months. And I grew from 3,500 employees to 6,500 employees in 18 months. And by doing that, when we enter into new geographies and new categories, I felt that we lost a little bit of the connection with our employees. And when we start integrating other cultures, even as we went and we acquired a company in the United States, I went into further Central American countries. So when I was putting all together all these organizations, I felt that I was losing a connection with my employees. And that's why I then realized that I was missing something that could unite us, the whole organization as one. And I could not find something much better than the higher purpose, because the purpose is something that unites us, all employees, no matter in which geography, which country you are. I mean, it is something that really gets you stronger. And the way I did that, I went out into a retreat with 14 executives, not executives that were reporting to me, but they really represent the diversity of my organization. So we were able to go out and discover the higher purpose of the organization. But what I really was fascinated by that, it was really at the end of the day, what I was doing was just open our hearts to the organization and listening to them with a different ears, if you will. And the way we went about it, it was very natural. And when these 14 executives came out of that retreat and we discovered the purpose of FIFCO, which was perhaps hidden in the history of the company, but we just needed to bring it alive. And then I started sharing that purpose with 50 executives, then 150, then 500, 3,000, and then all of a sudden we were sharing the purpose with all our organization. And I believe we just became more human by doing that.
Okay. One of the things we talk about in the course is that when the field looks at who are the real leaders, what companies are doing it at a best practice level, the idea of corporate responsibility and sustainability, purpose and values is usually referenced as the most important factor. Actually. So you mentioned,
yes. No, I would say, we've done two very important, I think, visionary decisions in our history of the company, and what was related to the CCR and the triple bottom line. But the second, for me, most important was to discover the higher purpose of the organization. I think obviously you have to do it right, because this is not an exercise that you delegate to an advertising agency and then just say, hey, please come up. Please tell me, what should my purpose be? This is more of an introspection process that you go through, and as you try to discover this, it's been fascinating, because we have used the same methodology now that we used to find the purpose of FIFCO, and now we're using it for our brands as well, because I believe the next the future of the brands are those brands that are really able to connect in a different level with your consumers. So the same exercise that we apply for the employees, I think it also would apply for the brands of the future.
The purpose that you've laid out is quite bold. In fact, some of the goals you have are pretty strong goals, one of which talks about poverty. And I'm curious if that, as you put together those goals, if they aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Oh yeah, sure. As we all know, that the UN goals, for the millennium and all that, but one of the most important commitments we made while we were in that process of discovering the purpose of our organization. And I was confronted with, I was, at one moment, I was related with one of, sharing the purpose with 3,500 employees. And one employee who was working in our manufacturing facility asked me the question, Ramon, I'm very proud of all what the company is doing in terms of social and environmental goals. I see you coming out of, giving TV interviews and magazines, but that there are people living on poverty conditions, and I'm one of them, he said to me, in front of 3,500 employees. And all of a sudden I hear all this clapping, from all the people, and because he asked me, what is FIFCO planning to do about, for those people who are living under poverty conditions? Not because the company paid lower salaries or anything like it. We pay very competitive salaries. But so I answered back to that employee, I'm very sorry to hear that, that you're living under poverty conditions, but we'll find out, how many of you here, in FIFCO are living under poverty conditions. I just didn't know, to be quite honest. And so, a long story short, in Costa Rica, we have 20% of our population living under poverty conditions, and we're not proud of that. Actually, if you go to Northern and Central America, where we also have operations in Guatemala and El Salvador, the poverty, are around 60–70% of the total population. So first, I needed to understand how many of my employees were living under poverty conditions. I didn't know that. And as a matter of fact, I hired social workers who actually completed the interviews, and actually ended up that 3.6% of our employees were living under poverty conditions. And I wasn't proud of that neither, And long story short, what it takes the government 10 years to bring one citizen out of the poverty conditions, I made the commitment that I would bring every single employee of that condition in 3 years. And we're 2 years into this program. So we developed this 360 program, to address financial conditions, health issues, housing issues. And we put this program 360, I call it. And so out of those already employees that were living under poverty conditions, we have lifted them already out of extreme poverty. I'm now working on the latter, but I believe in the next year, I would be able to have completed that program. So again, the United Nations goals for one of those is, I think, is the number 2, eradicating poverty. And that's what we're trying to do. So I'm planning to share it with the World Economic Forum coming up, but when I have the results already after 3 years of intervention. Very importantly, we put a mentor for each of these families, or of our employees. So the most distressing thing for our employees, and I think is very valid for everybody out there living on those conditions, is financial planning. Basically, people are spending more money than what they're earning, and we need to teach those employees and how to go about and spending their money. So if you were to ask me, I think this is one of the most important programs that we have here at FIFCO, and we call it FIFCO Opportunities, because we don't want people or employees to feel that they live under poverty conditions. So we did all the marketing around that. So our program is called FIFCO Opportunities, and we are here to eradicate poverty. Back in 2008, this is where we started on this journey. In 2008, we decided to merge our corporate social responsibility strategy with our business strategy, becoming a triple bottom line company. And basically, we decided that with the same rigorosity that we were working on the economic dimension, we will do the same thing with our environmental and social dimensions. So with this vision in mind, I went to the board to explain the business rationale behind this strategy. And if we were to walk the talk, we needed to adjust, for instance, the variable compensation scheme for my executives in terms of the balanced scorecard. So before 2008, we were remunerating our executives on 100% economic KPIs. And then I proposed to the board that I wanted to adjust that compensation to 60% economic KPIs, 30% social KPIs, and 10% environmental KPIs. As you can imagine, this is 2008, and we were in the middle of the financial meltdown at that time. And so we have very few exceptions where we have split decisions among our board members. And I have to say this is one of them that we experienced. And especially we had a lot of resistance from the independent board members that we had. But I remember at that time, the president and the vice president were very supportive, very intrigued by the proposal that we were coming forward. And I tell you, that was a very interesting time for us. But we were able to succeed it. So at the end of the day, the board approved to move and changing the way we were remunerating our executives. And if you were to ask them today, I think they feel the most proud board members, because I believe at that time that was a visionary vision or a decision to made in terms of changing the compensation. And ever since, we have been able to grow consistently year after year our economic performance, despite the fact that our executives now have to think in a trivial mindset, if you will. So one other chance that we have, I'd love to share with you our strategy of FIFCO 2020. I think is the best thing this company has ever produced. And I did it through a co-creation process with my team. And I think is the best thing this company has ever created. And for instance, I have 7 commitments, social and environmentally. And I have 1 economic. And 1 economic. And it's very ambitious, and it's to double the size of our company again by 2020. So I said only 1 economic commitment, double up, revenues and profits, and you know how that is. And I've said 50% has to be an M&A or non-organic, 50% will be organic. So that's one. But then I have these amazing 7 social and environmental commitments. One of them, by the way, is to eradicate poverty among all our employees in all our geographies and where we are currently present. So, but it's very interesting. I'm fascinated with this strategy and vision that the whole team put together. And the trick, it will be very busy implementing that, I guarantee you that. The framework is economic, double up, all right? Then I have on the social, I have 3 elements. We call it champions, the 6 champions, and is in terms of our employees, we want to be, with a great place to work measurements at 90% in terms of leadership, and I don't know how much you're familiar with it, but, we want our employees to be, at world-class companies, and this company being one of the best companies to work for. So we're driving that very strong. In terms of the community, we want to do 1 million hours of BTO, volunteering time off. And so just to give you, this is fascinating because up to today, I've done 460,000 BTO hours through the participation of our employees only, and I emphasize employees. So for me to go from 460,000 hours to 1 million hours of BTO, it will require to bring our stakeholders into the equation. And here was what it gets very interesting. So before there was a mito, I could not bring my family into BTO. Now I said we go with the families. We engage our shareholders. So shareholders now are doing BTO hours with us. I engage the suppliers. Suppliers are doing BTO hours with us. But the most fascinating of all of it is my consumers. So last 4 weeks ago, I did my first BTO with consumers with my most important brand, Imperial. It's our beer brand in Costa Rica. And we had 2 pilots to do consumer BTO. You have no idea the excitement, the connection with our consumers. They fill out our database. I mean, now, I'm selecting, So now all of my brands will be rolling out. So for me to engage with 1 million hours, people said, Ramon, you're crazy. And I said, I'm not crazy. I'm just gonna make it happen. And I have an amazing, we do this collaborated team where we put this, we have this philosophy. It's very interesting. Sorry to take time on this, but for instance, I have an opportunity or an issue. So I put a team of 10 members, normally 10, 8 members, diverse, completely diverse from different parts of the organization. Even I bring people from the outside if I need technical support. So for instance, I gave them the challenge. I need to collect 1 million hours. Go out, come back to me and tell me how we're gonna do it. And they go out, they dream big, come back, and they said, okay, Ramon, we'll need family, we'll need it, boom, boom, boom. So we created this amazing program. Now it's an evolution of our BTO only with employees now. Why this matters? Because for me, engaging in the communities, remember, all this is for the community. So for me, if the consumers are coming along and helping us do BTO, I mean, we're creating, and all these hours are related to our footprints. This is extremely important. All our BTO hours are strategic, addressed to our footprints. So that's number one is, I'm sorry, on the social, I said 1 million hours of volunteering time off, a great place to work at 90. And the number 3 is smart consumption. And this is related to our consumers. We are teaching our consumers how to enjoy and consume our products. So in that respect, I am addressing obesity issues in my carbonated soft drinks business, in my juices and all that, how they should be drinking our products, reducing the sugar content by natural sugar substitutes and so on. In the case of alcohol, it's changing the way, the consumption patterns of our consumers. So those are the three things, three objectives: 1 million hours, great place to work, and addressing a smart consumption. I call it the smart consumption. And then on the environmental, it's fascinating. I put a very simple concept, but so powerful. It's called We Positive. Means water, energy, and waste. We want our brands to be We Positive. So hear me on this. I just give you an example on water, for instance. So, and this is fascinating. For me, this is a revolutionary thinking. So what are we gonna do, for instance, I want my brands, and we call it FIFCO Air brands. I want those brands to be as light as the air in terms of footprints. So basically, as you know, we came from water neutral company into water now positive brands. Just to give you an example, Imperial, our flagship brand here in Costa Rica, has become the first brand to be water positive in the world. What does this mean? It is that we give back to society more than what we take from it in terms of natural resources. And in this particular case, the water. So Imperial, we're branding now Imperial, and actually we are launching in the United States Imperial. We did 2 test markets in San Diego and in Denver. And we are, with all the communication, saying to the consumers, this product, this beer brand is a water positive brand. So next time you drink it, you know that we are contributing more to society than what we're taking from it in terms of that natural resource that is so critical. So, and why this matters, and you're probably familiar with the circular economy, right? Concept. So now we're taking, for us to be positive in terms of water, for instance, I give you the example of Imperial. We have to take not only our footprint, but also our suppliers' footprint, our raw materials, the can producer, the malt, the hops. We have measured their footprint in terms of the water usage. So I tell you something. So imagine if all the water I need to use in terms of all my production, from the raw materials all the way to my process of production and so on. So I would ask you, or tell me, what would be your guess of what is the footprint of those suppliers, or from the suppliers and from the company? Any guess?
Is that a big I think you're going to tell me how it's going to be.
So I was very proud that I was water neutral in my processes. But when I measure the footprint of my suppliers, you know what happened? 80% of the footprint was in my suppliers, and 20% was the footprint in my production. So I said, oh my God. So this is circular economy. Basically, the concept is cradle to cradle. Probably you heard this one. So what I'm doing now, so for us to proclaim Imperial as the first water neutral, water positive brand in the world, I have to take into account the footprint of my suppliers. So all of a sudden, I was dealing with a 20% only, and then I have to deal with this incredible number. But we done it. So when we said in our FIFCO 2020, we want to be a We Positive company, what is behind this is incredible. Even Global Reporting Initiative, we follow their standards. They don't have a standard for positive now. we're working with them to
That's so
to
interesting.
create the new standard of the future.
That's great.
And
That's
we're writing it. We are writing that new standard with them. And I said, use us as an example. I mean, because I like to raise the bar. So you can imagine then, so we are working now with all our key brands to be able to become we positive in terms of water, energy, and waste. And this is our commitment for fiscal 2020. It's a major, major undertaking.
One of the things your goals you mentioned, I think if I'm reading it correctly, I understand it, but would love to hear you talk about it. But one of the goals talks about lead through your brands. I understand correctly. And so that if I'm reading that correctly, what we're saying is we want these brands to be the engine in society that makes the difference.
Exactly. Why is that? My learning was that, so the company, so here's an evolution or a journey. That's the way it happened to us. So I was very emphasizing in the fact of my processes internally from the company point of view. So FIFCO became a zero waste company. FIFCO became a water neutral company. FIFCO became a carbon neutral company in 2017. So that was the company. And then I said, I want my brands to be the ambassadors, if you will. Why the brands? Because they are the ultimate connection with our consumers, of course. And I want to gain a competitive advantage. But I said, first I start inside out. First I fix my house, right, in all my internal processes, and then I go out with the brands. And that's the ultimate connection here with the consumers. And I believe, this is my humble theory, that our brand consumers will start choosing our brands, on equal grounds to our competitors, because we are more responsible with our footprints. And I think I've been clearly demonstrated. I don't have something that it would prove it, but I can see it. I can see it happening, that people are starting to choose our brands because we're much more responsible. And especially those new generations we were mentioning. I was mentioning to you, we have 6,500 employees. So about 2,000 employees all across our organization and measure on the triple bottom line. So it's a very pretty much comprehensive. So the way we go about it every day, we have all our executives need to think in this 3BL, and there's no trade-offs between financial progress and social and environmental progress. So we have to have the mindsets of this executive has to be balanced, if you will, because every decision, it cannot go one against the other. So we're always living in this tension between that. But I believe by implementing this, we have become much more assertive. First, by listening to what society is expecting from us as a responsible company. I think we are much, on average, I think our sensitivity for social or environmental issues are much stronger than any other company. So why is that? Because we are very carefully, every year we conduct a very important, what we call the stakeholder engagement. And we collect information from all our stakeholders, from obviously our employees, our shareholders, our consumers, customers, NGOs, those who regulate us, the media, and so on, so suppliers. So we obtain this information, both qualitative and quantitative, and we understand what really these stakeholders are expecting from us as a responsible company. So I get this feedback, and with that feedback every year I renew, so I know what society is expecting from us. And that's why I get very important information that we incorporate in the way we need to behave going forward. So for instance, they tell us about the things that are important for them in terms of the social footprints. in terms of the environmental ones, and we update it year after year. It doesn't change dramatically, but some signals sometimes are stronger than others. And I think we have to be very very careful on how we integrate all that feedback. Because as a business leaders, we have two options, and believe me, sometimes they will tell you not good things about what your company should be doing to address the social and environmental footprints. And I've seen many, people that just doesn't listen. And thank God we decided to listen carefully and adapt those feedback into our strategy. So if they tell us, you guys need to reduce the water misusage, or you have the carbon emissions, or you have to deal with your obesity issues. So we take actions for each of them. I think perhaps the one thing that I would add is that many times, the most important thing that I've been asked over and over and over is about the how. The how do you, I think people generally speaking, even CEOs or students, they all will be aligned on the yes, I get it is the right thing to do, but the more important element is the how. How do you go about it? And I think that's for me, really, when you're as business leaders, we're always in the doing or the implementation mindset, right? So we all want to know how do you go about implementing that? And I think I mentioned this before, but we have used this very simple 5 steps process, if you will, and it's like a homemade recipe, if you will, and through the learnings that we have accomplished over the last 10 years. But for me, the number one and priority here is engage with your stakeholders. Number one, listen to them very actively, in that respect. Once you obtain that feedback, and either qualitative, quantitative, number 2 is get the buy-in from your management. Okay, once you have it, share with them, make that your management team buys into why is this important to do. Because if you impose things to them, it doesn't resonate well. You have to go through this process, but once you get their buy-in from your management, then that's for me the number 2. Get the buy-in from your management, and number 3, then set the objectives, because it's very easy to get lost. And what I have tried to do is always very focused. If the society is telling me, you have to take care of water or carbon emissions or waste, so I tried always to pick up 3 things, or that I can manage, and then I can deliver. So set the objectives, transparent and achievable, and we normally do that in our business, in the economic, but in social and environmental. And then number 4 is align the compensation. That for me has been the driving force behind all this. And the last thing is make public your commitments, because once you make public your commitments, there is no way back. So, and I have been criticized by making public those social and environmental commitments, and I've done it twice already. And people criticize you, because even internally, because they said, Ramon, you went out and said we will become a water neutral company, and we don't know how to do that yet. And I have said, I don't care, but we'll find a way. But there's no way back. Every single decision that you do going forward is because I have already put that a commitment in my society. So for instance, now for 2020, I have a strategy already laid out that it was a co-creation among all my key management team. And I made 7 commitments for fiscal 2020. And those 7 commitments are social environmental commitments. Now, we raised the bar. So I put forward that vision now for fiscal 2020. And I went in last February of this year, 2017, and I make these commitments now. So again, I feel very passionate about this because I have found in my experience that once you make those publicly, there's no way back. The organization will rally, will do anything.
Right.
And if you, by the way, build the compensation along the way, people will have the most amazing creative ideas to solve any of these issues.
So from a student's perspective, what we're trying to do for the students is let them know there's a wonderful opportunity here to do powerful things, but at the same time, it's not easy. There are real challenges that they should expect inside a company. If you could share some of your experiences, what are some of the obstacles or challenges you face?
I think in terms of obstacles, initially was the buy-in from the people. Normally, it's a little bit more complicated, if you will, just to be taking care of the financial performance that then, add on the social and environmental, considerations. And I think initially, and I emphasize the word initially because, and especially the people who were around you, let's say at my kind of age or, perhaps we were wired a little bit, more traditional, by doing business in the traditional way. So people, were confronted, why, Ramon, we have to, take care of it adds complexity, and they were not really at some point. So I said, listen, this is, for me, is doing the right thing. It starts with that. It's, for me, I started out of fear on this because I was fear, and I'm being very honest here. I was fear of stringent regulations, higher taxations, because I believe if we don't behave responsible, at the end of the day, society, through Congress, they go out and they said, you should tax these products or services at a different, or put more taxes so the products become less. And we're a beer producer, an alcohol producer. So believe me, I have a lot of people that are opposed in our industry. So in the end, I started out of that fear, or more laws and stringent laws and so on. And I said, we have to do the right thing here. And for me was to make sure I get my licensee to operate my business in a much more controlled environment. But as I started that journey, I realized, and especially with the younger generations, when I started of that and then we start implementing, some people were fully aligned, others were skeptical, and others say, let's wait and see where Ramon is trying to take us. And but as we continue, rolling the programs, rolling the initiatives, and I was very, very personally driving this. It was not something for me to delegate to the corporate social responsibility department or, to I don't know, to other departments. I was really driving this, and I was very visible. I started making decisions based on triple bottom line. I'll give you very few examples. For instance, in Guatemala, so I made a commitment with society to become a water neutral company by 2012. This is in 2008 when I made this commitment. And in 2012, in Guatemala, the law doesn't oblige you to have wastewater treatment plants, for instance. And so here, this was an incredible example we had, because my management team from Guatemala approached to me and says, Ramon, I need $4 million to invest in new capacity or expand the capacity in our production lines. I need $5 million for this, and so on and so forth. And I said, where is the money for my wastewater treatment plant? We need to build a wastewater treatment plant in Guatemala for me to be able to be a company water neutral. And the general manager said to me, Ramon, the law here doesn't require it, but you're not listening to me. I had made a commitment to become a water company, so I need Guatemala to come on board with this. So long story short, at the end of the day, I made the decision to invest in the wastewater treatment plant, and you know, capex is always finite. You know, you don't have all the resources that you need, and I put it off the investments in expanding the capacity because first I needed to complete that specific project, and I have like 5 examples of that, but it took only 2 of them. So the people realized, my management realized that we were really serious and really committed, that making commitments to society, you know, in any way it's by far, it was more important than just advancing on our financial progress. So I think the buy-in from the people always is a much more, it takes more time, you know, and that for me was the big obstacle. But I think today you ask any of my executives, and by the way, some people have left the company, very few, because they did not feel as perhaps identify with the business philosophy. But I would tell you the vast majority will come along with you. And especially now I can tell you, the younger generations, you know, and 52% of our entire workforce are millennials. So, and I think they are completely into this well-being, if you will, doing the right thing for society. Because all companies, no matter in which industry you are, whether it's product, consumer goods, or financial services, or agriculture, we all create social and environmental footprints. The important thing here is to identify them and then do something about it. And not many companies do that, I tell you.
So many CEOs have the intention to doing what you're doing, but they don't do it at the level and the level of commitment that you do it. What can you say to a CEO who is wanting to but skeptical? What 1 or 2 pieces of advice can you give a CEO? Because by giving a CEO advice, you're helping our students understand how they can support their leadership to move in this direction.
Okay. I think in the last 10 years, I have redefined what CEO success is, and I have come to the conclusion that this path that I'm taking will certainly have more challenges and it is obviously more complex, but at the same time, it's full of gratitude and satisfaction for doing the right things for all stakeholders, for the planet and society in general. I would say FIFCO purpose has enlightened every single employee, and has allowed our company to become a stronger business with less risk and with more differentiated products and services. We strongly believe that there's no summit we cannot reach, because we have, I think, found an incredible energy that comes from the purpose and our unique way of doing business. So for someone who has been navigating through this journey, I would recommend any CEO to start as soon as possible embracing the concepts of triple bottom line in their business. I think as a businessman, I feel energized and passionate about what has been happening here with FIFCO over the past 14 years now. And also our influence in our value chain with our partners. In October 2008, we have this dream to become a triple bottom line company. And the business transformation that has occurred in the last decade has been tremendously more profound than what has happened to FIFCO in the previous 100 years, I would say. And I think as a CEO, our mission is to see that we are here and ahead of others, anticipate opportunities and challenges. And any commercial or business strategy can be replicated easily. But the moment you find your company's purpose, its essence, and you start doing business aligned with that purpose, you will start getting as much as energy, passion, and satisfaction that you can ever imagine. So if there's something I would share with my CEO is that this journey is incredible. Embracing triple bottom line and combining that with a higher purpose. Wow, I think it's a winning formula. It's something that would add a competitive advantage with other companies out there. Every day I feel more optimistic, and I have had the opportunity to speak with other CEOs. Even let me start with my partners. As you know, we have companies. We're in the beverage space, so I deal with global companies like Heineken, Diageo, PepsiCo, and on the hospitality we deal with Marriott, for instance. And I can see obviously this company is very admiring our company because the way we just our way of doing things here in terms of our business strategy. And we have been, from a small country like Costa Rica, we've been able to influence more and more their own way of doing things, sharing the knowledge that we have accumulated over these years, and sharing the recipe with them. It's a very simple recipe in terms of how we have come along and incorporated this. Because one thing, many companies I know, they are start already identifying the footprints and are actually working to reduce their footprints. I think that is already happening more and more and more, and you see it in different reports and so on and so forth. I think what we still need to do a bit more, it's about start not only reducing footprints, but also compensating those footprints and actually hopefully creating positive value, if we will, in terms whether it's natural resources that you're using or addressing your social issues. But what I really admire most companies, and there are still very few of them, is when they're really, really able to link the compensation of your executives to those goals. Because many companies, the vast majority of the companies out there, they have very good intentions, they write what they want to do, but they're not yet linking to the compensation of the executives. And you know how it is out there. Because when you actually link that commitments to your compensation, that's a big difference. So I know many of these partners, like I've been working, they are not there, but they're moving in that direction. At least they are trying to make a bigger effort. It's not easy, I tell you, because it requires a visionary mindset here, and the support from the board of directors. You will not be able to accomplish that without the support of the board of directors.
This has been perfect. You gave us beyond what we expected. I can't thank you enough. Congratulations.
No, you're more than welcome. And we have the chance. All this FIFCO 2020, we can actually, sometime that I'm over there in Boston, Babson, we can share in with the students. It's something, I tell you, I think it's the best thing that we have co-created here with my leadership team, and it's a lot of insights and how to be forward-looking and trying to change the way we do business, for sure.
Well, your energy and your commitment to it certainly across. It's great to see.
You completely embedded. Thank you so much.